Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into a really intense moment from the Hebrew Bible. We're looking at Ezra chapter 10.
Yeah, it really does just drop you right in. No slow build-up here.
Exactly. The scene opens with Ezra, the priest, and he's in a state before the house of God, praying, confessing, weeping, even throwing himself down on the ground.
It's incredibly visual, isn't it? You get this sense of just raw public anguish. He's not hiding his feelings at all.
Not at all. And it's not just him. The text says a huge crowd gathers around him. Men, women, children.
And they're not just like watching, they're weeping bitterly right along with him.
Right. So it's this shared communal moment of breakdown, really. A sense that something has gone deeply wrong.
Absolutely. It really sets the scene for how serious this whole thing is. And then out of this weeping crowd, someone steps forward.
Shechaniah, son of Jehiel.
That's the one from
Right.
the Elamites. And he doesn't waste any time. He just says it.
Says what exactly?
He says, "We have been unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women from the peoples around us." Just lays it out there.
Well, direct. No trying to soften the blow.
None at all. He identifies the problem these marriages as the core issue, a break in their covenant with God.
Okay, so he diagnoses the problem. But then, crucially, he doesn't just leave them there in despair.
No, that's key. He follows it up immediately. He says, in spite of this, there is still hope for Israel.
That's quite a turn, isn't it? From acknowledging this deep failure to saying, okay, but there's still hope.
It's powerful, and it leads directly into his proposed solution, which is, well, it's pretty drastic.
What does he suggest?
He basically says, okay, let's make a covenant, a solemn promise before God. And the promise is to send away all these women and their children.
Send them away. Wow. And how does he justify that?
He frames it carefully. He says it's in line with the counsel they've received, referencing Ezra, actually, and those who respect God's commands. And he anchors it firmly in their law. Let it be done according to the law, he says.
So it's presented not as some radical new idea, but as a return to their established rule
Yeah,
about community identity and purity.
exactly. And making it a covenant adds this huge weight. It's a binding promise, not just a suggestion.
Right. And then Shechaniah turns his attention specifically to Ezra.
Yeah, he puts it squarely on him. Rise up. This matter is in your hands. We will support you, so take courage and do it.
So it's like, we see the problem. Here's the proposed solution. You need to lead this, but we've got your back.
Pretty much. It's a clear mandate, but with a promise of support from the community. Puts a lot on Ezra's shoulders.
It does. So how does Ezra take this heavy responsibility?
Well, the text says he rose up right then and there, and he makes it official. He puts the leading priests, the Levites, and actually all of Israel under oath to do exactly what Shechaniah had suggested.
And did they agree?
They did. It says they took the oath.
That oath changes everything, doesn't it? It makes it a formal, collective commitment.
Absolutely. It locks them in, the leadership, the people they've all signed up for this difficult path.
Okay, so the oath is taken. The decision, in principle, is made. What's Ezra's next move? Does he immediately start organizing?
Not quite yet. He first withdraws, leaves the crowd before the temple, and goes into a specific room, the room of Jehohanan, son of Eliashib.
And what does he do there?
He continues mourning. The text is very specific. He fasted, ate no food, drank no water, still grieving over the people's unfaithfulness.
So even after the public agreement and the oath, his personal grief and sort of penance continues.
Yeah, it shows this wasn't just like an administrative fix for him. It was deeply spiritual, deeply personal. It required this ongoing sense of sorrow and atonement.
Okay. While Ezra's doing that, the official wheels start turning, right?
They do. A proclamation goes out all through Judah and Jerusalem. Basically, a summons. All the returned exiles have to assemble in Jerusalem.
This wasn't optional, was it?
Definitely not. The stakes were incredibly high. If you didn't show up within 3 days, well, the consequences were severe.
What were they?
You'd forfeit all your property, everything, based on the decision of the officials and elders. And on top of that, you'd be expelled from the community, kicked out.
Wow. Lose everything and be banished. That's intense.
It tells you just how critical they saw this issue, like an existential threat, maybe. It demanded everyone's immediate attention. Failure to comply meant complete social and economic ruin.
No wonder people showed up.
Exactly. The text says, within those 3 days, the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered in Jerusalem. It even gives the date the 20th day of the 9th month.
Can you picture that scene?
Yeah.
This huge crowd summoned under this kind of threat, all gathered in the square by the temple.
And the text adds this amazing little detail. They were miserable, not just because of why they were there, which was obviously heavy.
But because of the rain.
Yeah, it was raining. So they're standing there distressed about this massive issue, and they're physically uncomfortable, cold, and wet.
That detail really brings it home, doesn't it? Makes it feel so real. These are people, dealing with a crisis in miserable weather.
It really does. The physical discomfort just adds to the emotional weight of it all.
So into this scene, this cold, wet, distressed crowd, steps Ezra again.
Right. Ezra the priest. And he gets straight to the point, addresses the assembly directly.
What does he say? Does he recap the situation?
He basically reiterates the charge. You've been unfaithful, you've married foreign women, and this has brought guilt upon Israel.
Still very direct. No softening it.
No. And his call to action is just as direct. First, make confession to the Lord your God and do his will.
A call for repentance and obedience.
Yes. And then the specific action. Separate yourselves from the peoples around you and from your foreign wives. The same thing Shechaniah proposed.
And how does the crowd react this time? They're cold, they're wet, they're facing this painful demand.
It's quite remarkable, actually. The text says they responded with a loud voice.
A loud voice. Saying what?
Saying, you are right. We must do as you say.
Wow. So, despite everything, there's this immediate vocal agreement from the whole assembly.
Seems so. A collective affirmation. They accept the diagnosis, they accept the necessity of the action, however hard it might be.
It's striking. But, agreeing in principle is one thing.
Yes.
Actually doing it, separating from wives, potentially children, that's another. Did they raise any issues with, the logistics?
They did. Immediately after agreeing, they get practical. They point out the obvious problems.
Such as?
Well, first, there are many people here. The scale is huge. Second, it is the rainy season, so we cannot stand outside. It's just not feasible to sort this out right here, right now, in the pouring rain.
Makes sense.
And they also acknowledge the scope of the sin itself. They say, this matter cannot be taken care of in a day or two because we have sinned greatly in this thing. They recognize it's a massive undertaking.
So they're saying, yes, we agree this must be done, but we need a workable plan.
Exactly. It's realism kicking in.
Right.
How do you manage something this disruptive and widespread, especially under these conditions?
So did they propose a different way forward?
They did. A much more practical, sort of decentralized approach. They suggest letting their officials handle the coordination for the whole assembly.
Okay, so not everyone processing it right there in Jerusalem.
Right. The idea was that everyone involved, anyone in any town who had married a foreign woman, should come before their local town elders and judges at set times.
Ah, so it shifts the process locally, town by town, but still under a central framework.
Precisely. It allows for investigation and resolution in waves, managed by local leaders, rather than this unmanageable mass gathering in Jerusalem in the rain.
That sounds much more feasible.
And they connect this plan back to the original goal, keep this process going until the fierce anger of our God in this matter is turned away from us.
So the aim is still religious reconciliation, appeasing God's anger through this more organized local process.
That's the idea. But even with this modified plan, the agreement wasn't totally universal.
Oh, who objected?
The text names names. Jonathan, son of Ashel, and Josiah, son of Tikva, are mentioned as opposing it, and they had support from a couple of others, Meshullam and Shabbatai the Levite.
Interesting. So even after that loud, yes, we must do it, there was still some pushback against the actual plan.
It seems so. It shows there was likely still debate, maybe resistance. Even if the majority had agreed, it wasn't a completely smooth path.
Adds that layer of realism again. Big decisions rarely have 100% buy-in immediately.
True. But despite that opposition, the text is clear. The exiles went ahead with the proposed plan. The decentralized approach won out.
And how did they structure this process? Who actually did the investigating?
Ezra took charge of that. He selected specific men, heads of families, one from each major family division, and they were designated by name. These men formed the committee, basically.
So a formal investigative body drawn from the community's leadership, not just random officials.
Right. It suggests a deliberate, organized process. These designated men were responsible for examining each case.
And do we know how long this took? This case-by-case review?
Yes, the text is very precise about the time frame. They started the investigation on the first day of the 10th month.
Okay, what did they finish?
They finished dealing with all the cases by the first day of the first month.
So 10th month, 11th, 12th. That's about 3 months.
Roughly, yes. 3 full months dedicated to this, systematically going through all the cases, town by town, presumably.
3 months. That really underscores the scale of this, doesn't it? And maybe the complexity or sensitivity of each case.
Absolutely. It wasn't rushed. It was a painstaking process, it seems.
And what were the results? Does the text tell us who was actually found to have married foreign women?
It does. It lists the findings by group, starting significantly with the priests.
Why starting with the priests?
Well, as religious leaders, their actions carried extra weight, right? Their adherence to the law was seen as particularly important. The text names specific priestly families involved descendants of Jeshua, son of Jozadak, Immer, Harim, Pashur.
And was there anything specific noted about the priests involved?
Yes. It says all the priests listed did two things. They formally pledged, gave their hands to put away their wives, and they each offered a ram as a guilt offering.
A guilt offering.
Yeah.
That reinforces the idea that this was seen as a religious offense, requiring atonement according to the law.
Exactly. It wasn't just a social issue. It was framed as a matter of sin and guilt before God.
Okay, so priests first. Which other groups were mentioned?
After the priests, it lists other groups with specific roles in the community and temple. The Levites, the singers, and the gatekeepers.
Showing it wasn't just the top leadership, but affected various levels of religious and communal life.
Right. It suggests the practice was quite widespread. And then the list opens up to include other Israelites.
Meaning the general population.
Essentially, yes. It lists numerous family lines. Perosh, Elam, Zatu, Bebai, Bani, Pahath Moab, Harim, Hashum, Bani again, Binnui, Nebo. It's quite a long list in the actual text.
The detail is pretty striking, listing all these families, and the text implies specific names within those families were recorded.
It really drives home the scale. This wasn't an abstract problem. It involved named individuals from across a broad spectrum of the community. The record-keeping itself is significant.
Yeah, it shows how seriously they documented this whole process. And what's the final summary statement after all these lists?
It ends with a really poignant line. All these had married foreign women, and some of them had children by these wives.
That mention of the children.
It hits hard, doesn't it? It acknowledges the human cost. The decision to send away the women, as Shechaniah proposed and the assembly agreed to, directly impacted families, children. It's a stark reminder of the painful consequences of this communal decision.
Definitely. So we've traced this whole arc in Ezra 10 from intense public grief and confession
To a difficult, controversial proposal rooted in their identity and law.
through the community's agreement, their practical concerns, the opposition.
And finally, this structured 3-month investigation and its recorded outcome, including that heartbreaking mention of the children.
It's a powerful story of a community confronting what it saw as a fundamental crisis and taking really drastic, painful steps.
It really is. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? It raises some timeless, difficult questions about communities and rules.
Like what? What should listeners maybe ponder after hearing this?
Well, maybe think about this. When any community feels that a widespread practice threatens its core identity, its values, or maybe even its survival, how does it respond? How does it navigate that? And crucially, how does a group balance its collective rules, its foundational beliefs, maybe even what it sees as divine commands, with the undeniable, often deeply painful impact those rules have on individual lives, on families? That tension between the collective good, as perceived, and individual reality, it's something societies grapple with again and again, isn't it?